Hey guys, so as you may have seen from the title, over the past 2 months I animated in 2D animation at least once every day, not having had any prior experience with it. And when I say no prior experience, I mean like I've never even been able to make a successful flipbook animation before, so I was coming to this completely new. To provide some context, in the beginning of May, I ran across some videos on YouTube that described how you could use Photoshop to create 2D hand-drawn animations, and since it was quarantine, I had a lot of time on my hands, so I decided to try and really get into hand-drawn animation. I honestly just started this entire learning process on a whim. As a result, I produced quite a few clips from doing that I wanted to put together in a video and talk about, focusing on the things that I learned over the course of doing this, or pointing out some flaws in what I did so that I can look back on this and improve and hopefully provide a little knowledge to anyone interested in 2D animation or animation in general. Also, at the end of the video, I wanted to give an update on the stop motion videos I have planned, so if you're interested in that, stick around. Also, I just wanted to mention that all of these clips, except for the very last one, which is at the end of the video, were all animated on 12 frames per second or on 2s. So without further ado, let's get straight into the videos. For this one, I wanted to take a break from walk and run cycles and have a little fun. It's very simple, but I was able to apply my knowledge and experience with ease in and ease out from stop motion to make it look pretty good. So this clip was the first one that took longer than a day to animate and finish. I had wanted to animate a fight scene ever since I got into 2D animation, so I finally decided to do it with this clip. The first one is the rough sketch I did before solidifying the lines and coloring it. For a first attempt at an action scene, I don't think it turned out too terribly. For a lot of these, I didn't use reference shots, so I feel like they could be a lot less stiff if I had used them. For the colored clip, I was just learning what brushes to use and how Photoshop worked in regards to animation, so if I remember correctly, I used a pretty wacky charcoal brush for the line work, which really messed up the coloring later on. And then as to the coloring, the biggest thing I learned is that in most animation, the shading has to be a lot starker in contrast to the base color. In this clip, the shadows are very hard to spot. I'd also like to point out that up till this point, I'd been using a mouse to draw all of this and animate, which was a real pain. But after this, I ordered a drawing pad with a pen, which made animating a whole lot easier. I think this one is the most ambitious 2D animation I undertook over the course of these 2 months. This first clip is the rough sketch that I did. I was kind of going for a One Punch Man-esque feel for the first shot. This next clip is the finalized lining, coloring, and shading of the characters. Overall, I think it turned out pretty well, and I was able to fix the stiffness in the first character's landing, and I was also able to learn from my previous mistake in the last clip and make the shadows a bit more darker so that they stood out and made it actually look like there was a source of light. This next clip is the isolation of just a background. I only painted 2 backgrounds and then keyframed them later to make them look smoother in the final clip. And then this is the final product. Other than the keyframing of the background to make it look smoother, I added some camera shake at the end and then some sound effects. I really like how the background turned out, especially since it was my first time ever doing anything like it, but it put a real toll on my computer. The brush I was using for the trees was really graphics heavy and my computer just did not like it. So this clip was a return to some more focused practice. It was actually surprisingly hard to make the arc of the ball realistic, so I had to adjust it multiple times. But I like the final product, though the inconsistency in the lining annoys me a bit. So this clip took me a while. A big part of why some of the sections of the clip feel off is because I animated camera movement without background or grid to juxtapose them against. Overall it's just small things that kind of bugged me. I learned later how helpful a grid can be. Another thing I learned during the making of this clip was how important it is to anticipate the actions a character makes. For instance, in the clip with the water polo player, I had a bit of trouble figuring out how to animate him throwing the ball. I looked up some clips of water polo players throwing balls, and I realized that when they throw the ball, the elbow comes forward first before the rest of the arm. The elbow coming forward first allows the audience to recognize that the arm will be making a throwing motion before the forearm actually makes that motion. And in some cases, it can also make the action snappier and make it look faster. Although it's not too apparent in my animation, I did try to incorporate it. I believe this was the first time I used reference clips to get an idea of how to animate the figures, especially for the swimming and water polo clips. Two people that I've been learning a lot from on YouTube are Ethan Becker and Howard Williamshurst, and especially with Ethan Becker, he really pushes the idea of using reference videos and reference photos that either you take yourself or you find online, and mapping out the main movements so that you can translate that into your work. This clip was inspired by a character from a manga I've been reading recently, since I now have so much time due to quarantine. So I kind of wanted to practice a bit more character animation, smaller gestures and not so action-packed like my sports and fight scenes. The first thing that I always notice about this clip is how off her body structure is. The arms and torso are too long, and I didn't really register it until I was nearly done with the lining, at which point it would have just been a royal pain to change anything. Also, I feel like the motion is a bit choppy. Doing this clip just showed me that smaller character actions is something I really need to work on. So this is another clip that was solely focused on practice. The first part is an exercise in animating a ball with more weight, thus incorporating less squash and stretch. I also tried to add some shadow to make it more realistic. And then the second part was an exercise in animating a bouncing ball but in 3D space, in contrast to the previous bouncing ball clip I made. The second part was really hard to map out, and making it realistic was a bit of a struggle. And honestly, figuring out where to stretch the ball out and smear it to make it look faster was a process of trial and error for me. So this was the last clip that I made within the 2 months. I took some practice exercises that I found online and put them into a larger clip to make them more interesting. The exercises were to animate a flour sack and to animate a run cycle in something other than profile view, which I'd kind of already done, but I thought it'd be good to do again. This was also the first clip I animated in 24 frames per second. There are very short portions where I animated a couple frames on ones to increase the perceptual speed of the action. Calling back to the time I mentioned animating using a grid as a reference, I was only able to pull off this one camera movement because I used a grid as a reference. It would have been way too hard to figure out how to angle the character's body without it. I also really like how the flame effects came out. I animated both of them sequentially instead of keyframing them, and I was really surprised at how they turned out. I had heard somewhere before that with stuff like fire and water, it's better to animate those types of effects sequentially instead of keyframing them. So that's what I've been doing over quarantine in regards to 2D animation. In conjunction with the animation, I've been trying to teach myself how to draw, which has not been as interesting or as respectable of a journey as my journey through 2D animation thus far. I'm definitely planning on continuing to make 2D animations. The shorter ones I'll probably post to my Twitter, or link in the description if you want to follow me for my terrible takes on movies and other miscellaneous topics. And if I get around to making some longer narrative animations, I'll definitely post them to YouTube. So regarding stop motion, I have a sequel to my latest video, The Warehouse in the works. I'm not really sure when it'll be finished, but I'm hoping sometime before September so I don't have to worry about it when school starts. That's not a set release time though. I'm actually not really sure how long the video will end up being. I'm also planning on doing some animation live streams in the future for both 2D and stop motion, so stay tuned for announcements regarding that. So with that, thank you for sticking around to watch this, and subscribe for more animation content to come.